US President Joe Biden will speak to Ukraine's leader over the phone over fears Russian troops amassed at the Ukraine border signal an impending invasion. Biden warned Russia's President Vladimir Putin on Friday of severe consequences if he chooses to invade. Joining me now live is Michael Ware, Sky News US contributor. Michael, thank you so much for joining us. Where do you see this situation going? Russia and the US held that phone call the other day, seemingly appeared to be quite hostile. What happens next?
Well, what happens next is, as you say, today, US President Joe Biden is set to speak by phone with his Ukrainian counterpart, Volodymyr Zelensky. Now, that's part of what's coming next, because that conversation is a part of setting the chess pieces on the board in the preparation for the talks between Washington and Moscow that begin next week on January 10. So one would imagine that this is an opportunity for President Biden to, one, reassure his Ukrainian counterpart of America's ongoing support for Ukraine's territorial integrity, and secondly, to make sure that the Ukrainian president is aware of the strategy and is on board and is fully informed. So this is about shaping the space before the talks begin next week. And let's not forget, we have 100,000 to 120,000 Russian forces massed on the border. And what's most sensitive about that is that the invasion window has just opened because of the conditions there in Eastern Europe. During the autumn and the spring, the ground is too muddy, too boggy to effectively move heavy armor. So the Russians have been waiting for the ground to freeze enough for them to be able to move their tanks and other heavy equipment. And that ground is now freezing. So they have a window from about now until around March, April to invade if that's what they decide to do. And curiously, some polling coming out of Russia shows that whilst some people think there will be an invasion, other people don't think there will be an invasion. The most significant takeaway from the polling is that the majority of Russians think that this crisis is the fault of the United States and the West. So in that sense, Putin has his people's support. No one in Russia wants to see body bags coming back home from an invasion of Ukraine. But they do seem to, as a people, see this and recognize this as a threat to their sovereignty and to their security. So the great game is underway, and we're seeing that being shaped now by today's phone call.
And in terms of this crisis, how big of a problem is it for the rest of the world?
Well, obviously, heaven forbid Vladimir Putin does decide to invade. And as far as US intelligence is aware, he hasn't yet made that decision. He's preparing for it. He wants to have that capability, but he hasn't decided yet that he's actually going to do it. If Putin does invade, America, NATO, and Western Europe has made it very, very clear that while they won't send ground forces in to defend Ukraine, there will be a whole raft of unprecedented consequences and sanctions imposed on Russia. And if that happens, that's going to reverberate across the world. Indeed, Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, has said, look, if you guys impose these sanctions, then we are willing to break off all diplomatic ties with the United States and end our relationship. Now, that might seem unlikely and extreme, but it gives you a sense of just what Moscow and the Kremlin thinks is at stake here. So, look, if there is an invasion, expect there to be reverberations around the world.